looking at that specifically, and that's what I was asked to limit it to. I was not asked to look at anything else.
All right. Jason Momoa. That's one of your comparables, right?
Yes.
He's been prominent since 1999. He was in Baywatch in 99. 44 episodes on Baywatch. Do you know that?
You can look it up if you did. I'll go with that.
Right. But you remember him on Baywatch.
Actually, I didn't watch Baywatch, but
right.
He certainly had the physique for it, so.
Stargate Atlantis, he was on that. Many episodes.
Right.
Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. He played Conan the Barbarian.
In TV or film?
Film.
Okay. I don't have Mr. Momoa's resume memorized, so.
No, I'm just trying to understand how you came to the conclusion they're comparable, because I just want to spend a few minutes talking about Mr. Momoa's career. Game of Thrones was one of the most popular things on TV for a period of 3 years, correct?
Yes, he was.
And he was in Game of Thrones.
Yes, he was.
Yep. And he's Aquaman, right?
Yes, he is.
Right. He's the title character in Aquaman.
Yes.
Yeah. And he was actually Aquaman in a movie before the Aquaman movie started.
You mean Justice League and other things like that, yeah.
Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. Wasn't he in that as Aquaman?
I didn't see that one.
Didn't see it?
No.
Miss Heard wasn't in that movie, was she?
Not that I know of, no.
No. And he was in both Justice League movies.
Correct.
Yeah. And he's in Aquaman 2.
Yes.
They used him in the second Lego movie. Right?
Yes.
He's one of the most heroic characters in the recent Dune blockbuster.
Which happened post-Aquaman.
Right. In fact, likely his character...
He's not the lead, though.
No.
In Dune, no, he's not the lead.
Did you ever read Dune?
Pardon?
Did you ever read Dune?
No, but I've seen the movie.
Okay. Do you understand whether his character will come back from the dead in the third movie?
As again, I didn't read the book, so he might. I don't know. We're just talking about that one movie.
That might be a bit of a spoiler.
Oh, man. Dude.
He's one of the principal leads in the new Fast and Furious franchise movie Fast X, right?
I don't know that for sure, no.
Okay. But that's not the career path that Ms. Heard has had. She's never been the title character in a movie. She hasn't spent years on television. She did, 8 TV shows? 8 single episodes of TV?
Again, I don't have her resume. If you want to show it to me, we can count them together.
All right. Mr. Momoa remains well-liked, even though he's engaged in a recent divorce from another actor. That's correct, right?
I don't know. I don't follow his fan base.
You don't follow Jason Momoa, but you use him as a comparable to come up with a $45 million
I said I don't follow
deal?
his fan base. I understand him as a prominent actor in the business, but I don't follow his fan base.
Isn't fan base one of the things that you analyze?
Of course, you can look at numbers, but I don't keep a watch on his social media feeds.
All right. All right. You indicated that Gal Gadot is in Wonder Woman.
Yes, she's a star.
She's in fact Wonder Woman.
I know, she's good too.
Yep. All right. She's the title character. And there's been now multiple Wonder Woman movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And even before that, she was in franchise films.
Which one are you referring to?
Fast and Furious.
Excuse me, I honestly don't remember her being that as one of the main characters. I know it's The Rock and
You,
that
you,
whole crew.
you didn't even know she was in the Fast and Furious franchise.
I've seen it on her resume, but I didn't. Again, I'm not a fan of the Fast and Furious.
All right. You'll agree with me that Wonder Woman is a more prominent role than Mira?
If you're going to talk about apples to apples in that exact movie, yes.
All right. What about, does Mira have any, self-titled franchise films?
Not yet.
No. And Ms. Gadot played a much bigger role in the movie they were in together, the Justice League movie.
In what movie they were in together? Oh, in Justice League?
Yeah.
I haven't counted the screen time, so I can't really say.
Okay. You indicated that another person that you compared Ms. Heard with is Zendaya. Right?
Zendaya, yeah.
Person so famous she goes by one name.
I guess when you have a name that's a Z, it works, I guess.
All right. She's been on the Disney Channel since she's 13 years old.
Right.
Right? She's won an Emmy.
Yes, she did.
Right. She was singing and dancing and swimming from trapezes in The Greatest Showman, right?
Yes.
Yeah. She's now been in multiple Spider-Man movies.
Yes.
She's 10 years younger than your client.
Right.
Yeah. But this is a person that you deemed incomparable.
Well, as I was explaining to you how I chose them, when you look at superhero characters, there's not that many to pull from. So I worked on pulling characters that were in superhero movies that were about the same age range within 10 years, as you've noted to me, thank you. And also just where her career would have gone. I said that they were comparable. They're not identical. So you can just look at what their career has done either before that superhero movie, then in others, or the one they were in, and then you look at where her career should have gone. Even though she may not have been at the stature of a Zendaya at that time, you can still look at it as a comparable trajectory of what happens when you're in a blockbuster movie. It's just a reference point. It's not meant to be identical. They're not meant to be the same people, or not even have the exact same career. It's meant to be a reference point. Simple as that.
So far, everybody we've looked at have been in more blockbuster movies than Ms. Heard.
But Ms. Heard was also in the biggest blockbuster movie, and the light that shines on Jason Momoa will also shine on her. So you have to look at it in context of the biggest movie that DC Comics is, and also one of the biggest box office films ever, probably within the top 10, because I've looked at it, right? So that light was going to shine brighter on her than someone who wasn't in that movie. And again, it would have just helped her in her career move forward, not stalled it and her world be silent afterwards.
For the jury to accept your damage analysis, they would have to agree with you that Ms. Heard was on the precipice of a meteoric rise. That's the word you used, right?
Actually, no, I didn't. I did use meteoric with someone like, let's say, Gal Gadot or Zendaya, but I actually gave you a range and gave the jury a range that they weren't all going to have a meteoric rise. Some of them would be smaller, right? And so what the numbers that I gave you do not represent a meteoric rise. A meteoric rise is when Jason Momoa goes from, I don't know, $4 million, $5 million to a $50 million payday. That's a meteoric shift in our business. But when someone has contracts that actually go from $1 million to the first one, $2 million, and then $4 million, that is standard for a franchise that is perceived to do well. And so I based those calculations on very specific numbers that were already contracted. I wanted to stay within reality and look at the numbers that were already contracted for Ms. Heard and just move out forward on one film a year, maybe a TV show here or there, and some endorsement contracts, which is very typical for an actor in our business to make that kind of money. It just is what happens.
So the example you just used is somebody went from $1 million to $2 million to $4 million. Your client has never had a contract that exceeds $2 million, correct?
Incorrect.
All right.
In the Aquaman it's actually the Justice League contract because they're associated. So Justice League, Aquaman, she was paid $1 million. Then in Aquaman 2, it was written that she was going to earn $2 million. And if there's another one, it was written in the terms that she would get $4 million. So it actually was a contract that Ms. Heard signed with the studio.
Right, but the movie hasn't been made.
Aquaman 2 hasn't even come out yet, so the third one is still on deck, as they say.
Yeah. Okay, let's put it differently. Your client's never been paid $2 million for a movie she appeared in.
She was paid $2 million for Aquaman. Right. Aquaman 2.
And she's never been paid $4 million.
She was contracted to be paid, and when the movie goes, that's what she will be paid. So that's what I said. She was
if she's in the movie.
Right, but if Aquaman 2 does even nearly as well as Aquaman 1, there's going to most likely be a third one. So we can look at that as a precedent that was set in writing, actually.
If a movie makes $795 million, you think there's likely to be a next one?
If it was the first or the second one, but if it's the fifth in the series, I assume that you're referring to Pirates 5. It performed well at the box office, yes, but certainly not in comparison to some of the other ones. And that's what a studio like Disney will look at to say, has that franchise had its run? Or do we need to change it?
A studio like Disney wants to walk away from an $800 million payday?
Well, an $800 million payday has to be put into context to the budget that it costs to get that movie and then the marketing thereafter. And with the increasing costs in not only Mr. Depp's fee or any of the, and plus the other actors' fees, plus general production costs that are getting more expensive, then you put in the marketing costs, which are sometimes 1, 2, or 3 times the budget of the film. A film like that, a studio can spend $600-800 million just making and marketing the film. So $795 million is a lot of money, and it seems like a really good box office, but you have to put into perspective of what's spent on production, marketing, and the overhead costs that the studio takes. So you have, again, it's all in context of what the budget of the film and the marketing of the film is.
All right, let's put some more things in context. Ana de Armas, that's another one you used.
Yes.
All right. She's most recently, I guess, in Deep Water with Ben Affleck.
I don't. Again, I know some of the movies that she's been in. I don't remember about Deep Water. I don't even know if that's out yet.
Okay.
To be honest.
She was in the last James Bond movie.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, they were talking about making her the next female Bond, right?
Right after her big Stars Born moment. Yeah, she's gotten a lot more big roles, which is what we had hoped for Ms. Heard.
Yeah. And you said that her breakout role was Blade Runner?
It was like the first big, studio movie that got a lot of attention. I believe that was the one that we can look at as a marker for her, sure.
Did you watch Blade Runner 2049?
I did.
Do you know what she did in the movie?
It was years ago. I don't remember exactly what she was in, what role she played, but she was in that movie, and from that, her agents used that as leverage to get her more movies.
You have no knowledge that her principal role in that movie was as a gigantic naked billboard?
Are you saying that's the only thing she was? She was a gigantic naked billboard. She wasn't in the movie.
That's the principal role in that movie.
I don't remember the movie well enough to know.
Okay. And did you know that she was? I talked a little bit about Ben Affleck, right?
Right.
He's an interesting example because he's been in a role that's been recast multiple times. You know that role?
Are we talking about Batman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batman.
Sure.
All right. So the title character in that DC series has seen how many actors?
Several.
Right. Michael Keaton.
He was Batman.
Val Kilmer.
You're a movie buff, yeah.
Yeah. Christian Bale was Batman.
I think he was, you're right.
George Clooney was Batman.
Definitely.
Yeah. I guess Robert Pattinson is now Batman.
Don't know.
Okay. But you're taking an absolutely iconic role that the DC universe has recast 4, 5, 6 times, correct?
Correct.
So that just because you have the role in the first movie or the second movie doesn't mean you get it in the third movie or the fourth movie.
Unless it's contractual.
Right. Unless it's contractual. So, now, let's look. Oh, Ana de Armas, she's like the new Marilyn Monroe on Netflix, too, right?
I believe so. She was also in Knives Out, which is probably even a bigger breakout role for her. But again, I chose Blade Runner because it's a similar thing. You have to start somewhere. But Knives Out probably was her big moment in time.
Yeah. All right. The other person you picked was Chris Pine. Chris Pine is in a superhero movie, Wonder Woman.
He is in Wonder Woman. He's also, well, Star Trek being a blockbuster, but not necessarily a superhero, right?
Yeah. He was in both Wonder Woman movies, right?
Yes, he plays the love interest to Gal Gadot, yeah.
Yeah. On Star Trek, in the Star Trek franchise, he plays Captain Kirk, right?
I don't remember exact role that he played. I didn't see it in the movie. I just know it from his resume, to be honest.
Do you know who Captain Kirk is?
Yes, I do.
Right.
Well,
but you didn't know that Chris Pine is Captain Kirk in Star Trek?
I hate to say I'm not a Star Trek fan.
Okay. But you used Mr. Pine as an example, irrespective of the fact that you didn't even know he starred in this franchise film?
I did know that he starred. That's why I used it. Again,
in fact, he was the most prominent person in the movie.
We can go over this a couple more times, and I'm happy to do so. All I wanted to do was look at, from a small pool of people that have been in huge franchise movies or superhero movies, and give you a sense of what the range is or what someone's trajectory can be. Again, they are not apples and apples. They're not both green apples or both red apples. I just was looking at a range. It's what we do. It's what we do in the industry. It's what you do to kind of get a sense of how much you're going to pay an actor, what they're worth in the foreign markets and the domestic markets.
I think my question was, did you know whether he was in Star Trek?
Yes, and you were asking me why I chose him, which is what this conversation is about. And again, I chose him because he was part of Star Trek and Wonder Woman, but mostly because he was in Wonder Woman. And I don't know the exact time frame of which came first, but the fact that he's in both of them is consistent with what actors of this ilk tend to do once they're in a movie like this.
But you talked about breakout roles, but you don't know which was his breakout role.
Chris Pine's been an actor. He's been a well-liked actor. He was in both Star Trek and in Wonder Woman. And
Did a
Star
movie
Trek,
with Denzel Washington?
Pardon?
Did a movie with Denzel Washington?
He's had a good career.
Yeah, great career.
Yeah.
Yeah, much longer career than Ms. Heard, right?
She was on the precipice of a great career.
Yeah,
she hasn't had the chance to negotiate that yet or be in those movies yet, so we don't know yet.
We're getting back to precipice. Didn't you just deny precipice a few minutes ago? I thought your testimony was she was on the precipice of meteoric rise. You said, I guess.
I didn't say meteoric. I said consistent. I don't know. She could have a meteoric rise, but I was talking about consistent with Ms. Heard.
All right. So of the actors you selected, 2 of them are the title characters in their DC movies. One
is Aquaman. Who's the other title character?
Gal Gadot.
Wonder Woman, right.
Right.
She's Wonder Woman. And you mean Jason Momoa, sure. Yeah.
So you get 2 title characters. You got James Kirk. And those are the people that you thought were most representative of Ms. Heard.
Again, there are not that many in the pool to pick from. I'm not going to put comparable actors that haven't been in either large, what we call tentpole movies, or franchise movies, or superhero movies. So I wanted to work within those parameters, and that's what I did. So those are the actors I chose, yes. And to show what type of work happens when you're in a big movie and what happens afterwards.
When you say comparable, every one of the actors you chose had a much longer TV career than Ms. Heard.
again, they were all in superhero or franchise movies that did very, very well at the box office.
And there are tons of actors and actresses who are in superhero movies that don't have meteoric rises thereafter, correct?
Not when they're the lead character with Jason Momoa, but to your point, there are many actors that have no career prior to a breakout role and then have a meteoric career and have had no career prior. So you don't always just look at the past. It's helpful, and with Miss Heard, she had good reviews, so that's what I looked at. But if you look at other actors and they have their first role and all of a sudden they become a superstar from one role. So that happens in our business. It just does.
All right. With respect to your comparable actors, you have no personal knowledge as to how much any of them were compensated over the period you reviewed.
Incorrect.
You have personal knowledge as to who?
Jason Momoa.
And you derive that personal knowledge from talking to somebody?
Yes.
He didn't tell you?
His agent did.
Okay. So what you will rely on what Mr. Momoa's agent told you, but you have you didn't see the contract.
No, his agent is at William Morris as well, so they told me that.
Right. And you've never seen anybody else's contracts as to what they were making?
No, but in 25 years of being in this business, I understand the basis of which actors are paid when they're in blockbuster films and then they're in large budgeted studio films. So it's not a leap to kind of understand where the actor's making. And again, I really didn't want to try to be speculative in my analysis. I wanted to work with the numbers that Amber had contracted for already and just take it from there and said if she had done one movie a year and one series and done product endorsement, that's how I got to the number. So I wasn't looking to take her on a meteoric rise. I wasn't looking to give her the same career as Jason Momoa. I took her numbers that her agents had actually negotiated and worked from there.
When you say you weren't trying to give her the same career as Jason Momoa, the TV program that she most recently did, The Stand, she made $200,000 an episode. That's what you testified to.
Correct.
And in your damage analysis, you give her $1 million an episode had the Waldman statements not occurred. And you do it only because you believe Mr. Momoa has gotten that in something that he's in.
Right.
So you are giving her the same career as Jason Momoa.
Well, again, with someone like Ms. Heard, who was in a blockbuster film with a team at William Morris, in my discussions with William Morris, that's what they were looking to negotiate for her on other projects. So I got some of that information from her management team directly.
So her agents were looking to get her as much money as possible?
I think that's the job of an agent. They usually try to get the most money as possible.
Your testimony is that they were looking to get the money for her, but you need somebody willing to pay on the other side of that deal, don't you?
Right, but agents are working with people in the industry and have a pulse on have a finger on a pulse of what's going on, so they know who's marketable and what the prices that all the streamers are paying these days.
You haven't seen a single one of the endorsement contracts that you referenced, other than Ms. Heard's?
No, other than, again, what I was talking to William Morris in terms of the pricing that they are aware of, not only for their own clients, but what's out in the marketplace, and it's pretty consistent. And I've also worked with other actors on other cases that have gotten similar contracts, so I'm familiar with the rates of endorsement contracts.
You haven't made any reference to the actual earnings of any of these actors.
Again, as you do an analysis, you put together the numbers that you know from both your experience and the marketplace and the agents that are working in the marketplace. So together, that's how I created those numbers, and mostly using Ms. Heard's numbers specifically and giving her a very steady career, which is what she had had prior to Aquaman.
Yeah, and you don't have the prior earnings of any of the actors you looked at other than Ms. Heard's.
No, I don't have all the contracts now.
You don't have any of that information.
I'm sorry?
You don't have any of that information?
No.
Okay. In fact, that information, I guess aside from Mr. Momoa's, is confidential, right?
Usually it is, yes.
Yeah. And the only reason you know anything about Mr. Momoa is that Ms. Heard shares an agent? or an
Right,
agency.
but I've also been in the industry for many years, and I know what actors get paid. I talk about budgets constantly, so it's not a secret within the industry the amount that actors in those types of movies are paid very, very well.
You're not currently working as an agent for anyone, are you?
No.
All right. So, the salaries of these comparable actors, did they form some basis for your opinion?
No.
Okay. So your opinion, as I understand it, is that Ms. Heard should have been able to renegotiate an existing contract.
Which is standard in the industry as well as with her agent specifically.
Do you know if it's standard with Warner Brothers?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if it's standard with Warner Brothers?
I don't know if it's standard at any of the studios, but it is standard for agents to renegotiate, and oftentimes are successful when the film is done so well.
Right, but what you're talking about is there's an existing contract where Ms. Heard has made a promise that she will do the next movie for, in this instance, $2 million, right?
Right.
And what the agent is trying to do is to get Warner Brothers to say, hey, you should pay her more than your contract says because you like her? What?
Well, as Ms. Kovacevic said, also, it's standard in the industry. As again, I've been in the industry, I've worked with agents, and I've worked with lots of lawyers, and we have conversations about what is an actor getting, or what can they do, or what are they going to do the next time. So again, it's a standard in practice in the industry, especially when a film is as successful as Aquaman, that the agents will go back and renegotiate. In fact, that was conversation.
Isn't the standard practice is that they would try to renegotiate, but it's up to the studio?
Sure, but oftentimes in a movie of such of the nature of Aquaman, they're very successful, usually.
But the entirety of your analysis assumes a renegotiation with a studio for terms that are double what the studio had already got a promise from Ms. Heard she would work for.
Correct.
All right. Have you talked to Walter Hamada?
Have I spoken to him?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Who is he?
He's a senior executive at Warner Brothers, or yeah, I think he still is there, but certainly at the time of the renegotiation, he was a senior executive.
And do you know whether he's the president of DC-based film productions?
I think that's exactly his title, yeah.
Yeah. Who's in a better position to determine whether Warner Brothers would renegotiate, you or Mr. Hamada?
Again, I based this on the agents that were talking to Warner Brothers about Mr. Momoa, and they were wanting to talk to them about Ms. Heard as well.
Okay, I'm not
So
sure.
I based my information on them. So the connection should be Mr. Hamada or the agents, not Mr. Hamada and me.
All right. Who's in a better position to know whether Warner Brothers would renegotiate?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Just asking.
I'll sustain the objection. Next
Sorry.
question.
Did you review any testimony from Mr. Hamada?
I did.
Did you understand that Mr. Hamada says that they want to hold hold the actors to their deals?
That was a philosophy that he said Warner Brothers had, yes.
Yeah. Did you understand that Mr. Hamada said that nothing Mr. Depp did impacted her compensation?
I don't remember that part of the testimony. Do you have it available for me to read?
You don't know whether Mr. Hamada testified. Did anything Mr. Depp said about Amber Heard affect her compensation?
Again, I don't
remember.
I don't recall that testimony. No.
Do you know whether Mr. Hamada indicated whether he even knew who Adam Waldman was?
Again, I don't remember the conversation about Hamada and Waldman or Depp.
And you don't remember whether Mr. Hamada made any statements as to whether anything Mr. Waldman said affected Ms. Heard's compensation?
In my experience, studios don't talk about how or why they make decisions based on publicity or conversations. They're not going to try. They're going to be very protective of all their relationships. So that's just natural.
Yeah, unless you can get them to testify under oath at a deposition, right?
Well, even so, they're not going to say anything negative. They may bypass it by being positive, but they're not going to do anything that could potentially damage a relationship that may change or be worthwhile in the future. So that's just what a studio person does.
Mr. Hamada is in the best position to determine whether there were chemistry issues with Ms. Heard.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
He's the president of the company.
Overruled.
I don't know how involved Mr. Hamada was on a daily basis in terms of chemistry, but I do know that Warner Brothers did a chemistry test with Ms. Heard and Mr. Momoa before she even got the role. She went in and did what they call a chemistry test. So that was to actually see whether there was good chemistry between them. And evidently there was good chemistry because she was then hired to be the romantic interest. So whatever Mr. Hamada said during his deposition, I look at what actually happened in real life, which is she got the chemistry test and then she got the job.
Yeah, let's look what happened in real life. She went in before and took the test. Then she made a movie. Then there was an existing movie under which Warner Brothers could then decide whether there was chemistry, right?
The movie worked. It made over $1 billion, and they're all over the poster. If they didn't think that there was chemistry, they wouldn't have put Ms. Heard on the poster next to Mr. Momoa. So,
you know there were multiple posters for the Aquaman movie.
Yes, there always are. That's standard.
And that 3 out of the 4 posters, the standard posters for Aquaman, didn't even feature Ms. Heard.
Right. So when you make a poster at the studio, it's normal to have 3 or 4 variations because you want to appeal to different people's perspectives. So you want the romantic poster, you want the action poster, you want the superhero poster. So it's normal for them to have many posters, but the romantic poster was of Ms. Heard and Mr. Momoa.
Right, and everyone, and all the others are just of Mr. Momoa.
Like we talked about, it's Aquaman, but she was prominent in the ones that Warner Brothers wanted to appeal to women and to the romantic interest of the consumer.
Right. What movies would Ms. Heard have gotten absent Mr. Waldman's statements?
Well, the ones we know about specifically that she was in conversations with was a movie with Gail Garcelle Bernal, I believe that's how you say his name, at Amazon, which is what Ms. Kovacevic said. And she was also in consideration for a movie called Ambulance with Michael Bay. But again, after the Waldman statements, nobody would talk to the agents, and so they weren't able to garner more. Oh, she also had a movie that she was interested in producing that a good friend of hers, or a friend of hers, or colleague, was doing. So there was at least those 3 that I read about.
Those were 3 movies that she was being considered for, but you don't know what movie she was going to be in.
Well, again, they stopped the conversation after the statement, so we don't know where they would have gone, of course. But she was in consideration for all of them, and given her fame from Aquaman, that would have helped all those movies. So it would have made a lot of sense.
You're projecting movies way out into the future that you have no knowledge would ever have gotten made.
Well, that's what we do when you talk about comparables and economic damages. You talk about the future. That's standard in our industry as a forensic expert and in the industry. That's how movies are financed, as a matter of fact, is by forecasting what happens in the future.
What connection do you draw between Mr. Waldman's statements and the reported reduction in Ms. Heard's Aquaman 2 role?
Again, it's just it's the timing of it all. It's the timing of it all. And also, they were going to take her out of the movie after the statements, and then they put her back in. And then can I talk about the emails that I read? I'm not sure at this point, but
so when you say they were going to take her out of the movie, when you have an option, you literally have the option whether to include the actress, right? That's what it means.
correct.
Right. So they can choose to exercise the option or not exercise the option. Entirely up to them.
Correct.
And they have that particular studio, to your knowledge, has repeatedly recast even major figures in their DC movies.
We talked about Batman.
What about Superman?
You know, I'm not. I think I'm more familiar with the Batman actors. I think there have been a couple actors of Superman, but depending on how the movie performed, if a movie doesn't perform, they'll look for other actors. Or if they want to go a different direction or reboot a franchise, they will look at different actors. So if the movie's successful, they're not likely to change the actors, especially not in the second one or the third one.
Another reason they'll look for a different actor or actress, if the actor or actress is charged or asking too much money to play the role again, correct?
Yes, not in figures under $10 million, but yes.
Yeah. If you're asking for too much money, you might not get your role again. And your analysis assumes that Ms. Heard could double her money.
Well, her contracts doubled her money from each one to the next, so it wasn't that large a leap to do that, especially when the agents had told me that that was what had been they were considering and what they'd been discussing.
All right. You seen the script of Aquaman 2?
Personally?
Yeah.
I did see a draft. I don't know what the date was or when it was or where in the succession of the rewrites it was. I did see one draft, yes.
You don't know what Warner Brothers has in mind for that movie in terms of the kind of movie it's going to be?
It's a superhero movie.
Right. It's supposed to be like a buddy comedy, right?
I don't know. I don't know about a buddy comedy. It's an action movie, superhero movie. I don't know.
Who's Patrick Wilson?
Patrick Wilson. I've heard that name in terms of an actor, but I don't know Mr. Wilson.
All right. Do you know if he appears in Aquaman?
Again, I don't know him by name. If you want to show me a picture, I can, or a clip from the movie.
All right. Do you know if Mr. Wilson appears more frequently in Aquaman than your client does?
I didn't count the screen time when I watched the movie. It was a long, even when I watched it again, I didn't count the screen time of anybody else.
All right. Did you read the testimony of Mr. Hamada?
We discussed that, yes.
You disregarded all of it in your analysis as to her ability to renegotiate, correct?
Well, I remember the part where Mr. Hamada said that from time to time they will break their philosophy and renegotiate. It's what they did with Jason Momoa and with Gal Gadot. So, it coincides with what we know in the industry, which is it can be done.
It's what they did with the two title characters in the DC universe.
Again, I've worked in the business for a long time, and I've seen a lot of actors renegotiate their careers. Not their careers, renegotiate their fees. It's common practice. And it's certainly what the agent will think about first when a movie makes $1 billion+.
Right. Again, focused on the agent, but it's the studio that pays the bills.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Your Honor, I have a fair amount more to do.
Continue.
I'm sorry?
Continue.
Okay. I didn't know if we were going to 5:30 today or not.
Every day is 5:30 day.
Okay. We may not even need to get there.
Every day is 5:30 day.
All right. Perfect. All right. You talked about Ms. Heard's endorsement deal with L'Oreal?
Yes.
And that L'Oreal has concerns about using her because every time they try to use her, people respond negatively to her.
People don't. The Depp fan base has responded, have posted negative things about Ms. Heard on their campaigns.
So, did you say the Depp fan base?
Well, people that were using the hashtags that were consistent with the rest of the Depp fan base.
Yeah, but there are people posting negative things that, other than things that came from Mr. Waldman, correct?
I haven't seen all the. I was just looking at what L'Oreal discussed and what L'Oreal said in their communications.
All right. They made. Did you see L'Oreal make a word cloud of the words that were most commonly associated with Ms. Heard in its marketing campaigns?
I knew they did that. I didn't see it myself, actually.
Right. Do you know what words there were?
Again, no.
Okay. You didn't talk much about this, but in order to get to the damage analysis that you got, the $45 million, I think at least initially you suggested that Ms. Heard would have a role producing and starring in a movie, and that she would make $12 million.
I've talked about that, but in the latest calculation, that was really less what I considered and more about what films and TV and endorsement deals that she would do. The producing was something that she had wanted to do, and again, Mr. Momoa got that, so that's where the agents were discussing those figures with me.
The last movie that she has a production credit for is in 2013, right?
Again, I haven't memorized her resume.
It was a movie called Syrup. Did you ever hear of it?
No. Aside from having probably seen it on her IMDb.
Yeah. And Soon the Darkness, that's her other production credit, right?
I'll if you say so. If you're reading it off of her resume, I will believe you, yes.
2010?
Okay.
All right. 12 years ago. But you, at least at some portion of at some point in this analysis, were of the mind that she would recover $12 million with a producing role and a starring role in a movie? Because that's what Mr. Momoa got.
Again, the agents were just saying that those were the kinds of numbers they were looking at to help her as she moved forward in her producing career.
Right. Those are the kind of the numbers the agents would like her to get.
Right, but again, I didn't use that in the final analysis of my $45 million, so it was just a discussion point because that's what the agents wanted me to consider.
All right. All right. You have testified that the breakout role for Miss Heard was Aquaman, right?
I didn't say the breakout role, but I used it as a movie that it was a superhero kind of super box office success. I think that some of her other critically acclaimed movies probably helped her break into that role, which would have been The Danish Girl, and then her work in Justice League, which was a natural progression to getting to star in Aquaman.
All right, but I used breakout. Perhaps you didn't, but this is the movie that springboards her to the kind of money that you are suggesting she should earn.
It should have, yes.
Yeah. And other than Aquaman, which was released in 2018, how many movies has she booked?
Well, she booked Aquaman 2.
Right.
And she did The Stand, which was a significant television show.
Right. But outside of the Aquaman franchise, she obtained only one movie role, since 2018, right?
Right. The industry also knows that she's planned to be on that next movie, and they understand her production schedule, so she's not going to go after films that would conflict with a mega box office movie. So there's scheduling and conflict issues as well that she and her team would consider.
So when was Aquaman released in 2018? It's December.
It was either December 2018 and then it depends on where it was in the world. It started in December 2018 and then it moved out, into 2018.
How many months between December 2018 and the Waldman statement went by?
12, I think, 15 or 16 if my math is correct.
Right. She got one role during that 15 or 16 month period, during the entirety of the post Aquaman boost, right?
She got Stand.
Right.
And then she was in discussions for the films as they were getting ready to go.
But she didn't get another role for 16 months between the release of Aquaman and what you say are the Waldman statements.
Well, she got the Stand.
Right. She got one TV role.
A pretty significant TV role, yes, for a Stephen King novel.
Right. She was in a movie, though.
I'm sorry?
She was in a movie that was released after Aquaman.
What movie are you referring to?
Gully.
Oh, well, I don't know when that was shot, so you'd have to tell me when it was shot. Movies get released at different time frames. Like, they can be shot in 2016 and not get released till 2018. So you'd have to tell me. We'd have to look at, the actual filming dates of the Gully for me to talk to you about that.
She wasn't initially cast in Gully, was she?
I'm not familiar with the casting process of Gully.
All right. Do you know who Alice Eve is?
Who?
Alice Eve.
Alice Eve. Sounds familiar, but I'm not recalling who she is.
She's an actress, been in any number of movies. You don't know who she is?
Again, I know her name, but I don't know her resume.
She's in Star Trek.
Great.
Right. She was in one of those breakout roles, Star Trek, but you don't even know who she is.
I talked to you about Star Trek before. I'm not a big Star Trekian.
Okay. Ms. Heard replaced Alice Eve in the movie Gully, right?
I don't know the casting process. I don't know who's starring that movie.
Do you know what she was paid?
Who?
Ms. Heard.
For Gully?
Yeah.
Can you tell me when that was in? No, I don't. But what was the filming date of, and what was the start date of Gully?
You didn't look at the Gully contract when you were making an analysis of Ms. Heard's damages?
I don't recall whether I looked at it or not.
Did you understand that she was making $2,190 per week for Gully?
Can you tell me when it was shot? When does that contract get negotiated? It's relevant.
The contract is negotiated prior to the release of Aquaman.
Okay.
So she signs this contract for $2,190. Do you know what the Screen Actors Guild low budget agreement minimum scale is?
It changes from year to year. It depends on what year and what the size of the budget. There's actually 3 or 4 different scale, benchmarks. So when there's a low budget, it can be a micro budget, it can be a minimum budget. At low budget, there's like 4 or 5 different scales that they use when it gets to anything other than a studio film.
Yeah.
And oftentimes actors do passion projects, and that has nothing to do with, or something that they really love to do, or they think that would be good for the career. It doesn't have anything to do with the fee made on the film.
All right. What's a loan out?
A loan out? A loan out is the corporation that an actor will use so that their money comes in through a corporation, and then that corporation technically loans out the actor's services to the production. So the loan out is the corporation that the actor uses. and then they loan out the services to the production company. It's just really for tax purposes.
Do you know of any movie that Ms. Heard booked immediately prior to Aquaman other than Gully?
Well, I know she did Justice League.
Right.
I don't remember the dates and times of the filming of the other ones. You always have to look at the filming dates.
You talked about Mr. Schnell. Gully was in his chart, right?
I don't remember where Gully was.
Right. Did you look closely at his chart?
Pardon?
Did you look closely at his chart?
At Mr. Schnell's chart?
Yeah.
I looked at the numbers with respect to the social media campaigns is what I was looking at Mr. Schnell for.
Okay. Do you know whether any of the dates of the Waldman statements even appear in Mr. Schnell's chart?
I don't remember.
Okay. You talked a little bit about Q scores and Mr. Banya. Do you remember that?
Yes.
For Ms. Heard, Mr. Banya used Q scores from immediately after Aquaman, right?
Again, if you want to show me something, I can answer it. I don't remember every word of Mr. Banya's, but I remember talking about the dates with you earlier.
All right. But you don't know as you sit here today whether the Q scores that Mr. Banya used were after Aquaman but before the Waldman statements?
He used a couple different scores based on dates. I don't remember if they were correlated to the statements or not. I remember years more than anything else. Again, I looked at thousands and thousands of pages of documents, so I don't remember exactly what his said.
Even before the Waldman statements, Ms. Heard had very high negative Q scores. Isn't that correct?
Very negative high Q scores?
No, very high negative Q scores.
As I said, very high negative Q scores. I remember discussions of a lot of Q scores. I don't remember exactly what or when, which score, or whether it was net.
So in your analysis, you didn't consider Ms. Heard's negative Q scores as a restraint on what she might earn on a going forward basis?
No, Q scores change all the time. Ms. Heard's IMDb score has been 1, and it's been 300. Mr. Depp's Q score has been 1, and it's been 253. Q scores change all the time. Scores change all the time. They're based on current events and movie releases.
You talked a little bit about Mr. Depp's damages. Did you talk? Who's Jerry Bruckheimer?
Who's Jerry Bruckheimer? The producer of the Pirates franchise. Well, he's a huge producer of a lot of movies, but he happens to be the producer of the Pirates franchise.
You didn't talk to him prior to your testimony?
Personally, no.
No. And you didn't have other people talk to him on your behalf, did you?
Me personally, no. I did not talk to Mr. Bruckheimer.
And you've never spoken with Mr. Bruckheimer about why Mr. Depp has not appeared in a 6 pirate movie?
There has been no 6 pirate movie. There is not a Pirates movie titled Pirate 6 yet.
Right.
Forever.
But you haven't talked to Mr. Bruckheimer as to whether Mr. Depp was going to appear in the movie?
From things that I've read in newspaper publications and emails, I've read that Mr. Bruckheimer was uncertain whether Mr. Depp would star in.
Right. But you haven't talked to him. And you've never spoken with Sean Bailey about this, right?
No.
Or anyone at Disney?
I actually put a call into someone at Disney, and they didn't want to talk on the record.
All right, you called somebody at Disney, and they didn't want to talk to you.
No, again, as I said, studios don't want to talk about their stars, whether they want to preserve a relationship that may or may not be used in the future. So it's their tendency not to talk. about people they are in business with.
So you have no personal knowledge why Mr. Depp hasn't made a sixth pirate movie?
Well, as I said, there is no sixth pirate movie.
Right. But you don't know why. You have no personal knowledge why.
I don't work at Disney now.
Did you listen to Mr. Wiggum's testimony in this trial?
I read Mr. Wiggum's testimony.
And Mr. Wiggum said Mr. Depp had a deal for the movie, right?
I think Mr. Wiggum did. The other agent, Mr. Carino, said he did not. And as there is no Pirates movie, there have been no deals negotiated, and that's what Ms. Jacobs also testified to.
But Mr. Wiggum testified to something else.
It doesn't correlate, as we say, to the other two agents' testimony.
You've indicated that a portion of the reason that Mr. Depp has received a variety of negative comments in Hollywood is that he engages in lawsuits.
One of the elements that has contributed to a lot of negative press and attention is due to the lawsuits, and the activity and the behaviors that we talked about earlier have been brought into the limelight.
Mr. Depp's lawsuit here has generated negative publicity for Ms. Heard, correct?
Yes.
That lawsuit, until she's filed a counterclaim, didn't relate to the Waldman statements, did it?
Mr. Depp's lawsuits?
Yeah.
No, we talked about that. It was pertaining to her op-ed piece.
Right. It related to what
Pardon?
Ms. Heard said.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Depp's lawsuit relates to what Ms. Heard said and not to what Mr. Waldman said.
It related to the op-ed piece that Ms. Heard wrote.
Right. So Mr. Waldman's statements have no connection to the negative publicity that Ms. Heard has received relative to this trial, correct?
Objection calls for speculation, foundation, hearsay, and outside the scope.
Any response?
We're looking for a causal connection here.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Yeah. When was the last time you met with Ms. Heard?
I only met Ms. Heard at lunch today.
Okay, that's the first time you talked to her.
First time I met her.
Okay. What's your compensation for testifying here today?
For testimony, it's $650 an hour.
What has been your compensation to date for providing the assistance that you have in this case?
I've been working on the case for about 3 years, and over the 3 years, I believe it's around $60,000.
You said 60?
Yeah, over 3 years.
All right. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I'm going to make